Welcome to Mindset Matters Book Club YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries. Today, we are diving into a book that is, well, it's structured as a conversation. A really fierce, high-stakes debate, actually.
It really is. It's between this eccentric philosopher who's completely steeped in the principles of a psychologist named Alfred Adler and this very skeptical youth.
And the book is called The Courage to be Disliked. It's basically our guide to Adlerian individual psychology, which, it really stands as a profound counterpoint to the kind of psychology most of us are familiar with.
You mean Freudian thought, the idea that our past determines everything.
Exactly, that kind of determinism.
And you said the stakes are high, and they are, right from page 1. Because the philosopher makes these claims that on the surface they sound utterly fantastical.
Almost like riddles designed to just provoke you.
Right. He insists that people can change completely, that the world is, in fact, simple, and this is the most shocking one, that happiness is available to everyone right now.
Regardless of their past, regardless of their circumstances, and the youth, who really, he represents all of us, our collective skepticism.
He finds it totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
He basically says, look, if life were so simple, I wouldn't be suffering like this. It's an insult.
So our mission today is to really unpack these claims one by one. We're going to navigate the core tenets of this philosophy of courage and find out exactly why the philosopher insists that the path to a fulfilling life is so much simpler than we let ourselves believe.
And for you listening, the central challenge here is psychological. It really boils down to one question. Do you have the courage to accept these radical ideas?
Because that first foundational claim, it just dismantles the very idea of a shared fixed reality.
It blows it right up.
Okay, let's get into this setup because it's crucial. The foundational premise is, and I'm quoting here, none of us live in an objective world, but instead in a subjective world that we ourselves have given meaning to.
Which is a huge statement.
Yeah.
It's saying that the external facts of the world history, politics, even the laws of physics, they're all secondary to the interpretation, the story we layer on top of them.
If we really were all living in one single objective world, then shouldn't everyone who experiences the same thing, say, living through a war or getting the same degree, shouldn't they all turn out the same?
Of course. They'd have the exact same personality, the same life path, but that's obviously not what happens. The difference, the variable, is the subjective meaning we assign to those objective facts.
The philosopher uses this really wonderful, tangible analogy to explain it. It's the well water analogy.
Yes, this is a great one. So the objective fact is the temperature of water from a specific well. It stays constant all year round. Let's just say it's 18 degrees Celsius.
That's a measurable, constant number. Any scientist could test it and get the same result.
Right. But your experience of that water shifts dramatically. So you drink that 18-degree water on a scorching hot summer day. How does it feel?
It feels amazing. It's gloriously cool, maybe even cold. It's life-saving.
Exactly. Now, you drink that exact same 18-degree water in the middle of a freezing winter. Now, how does it feel?
It feels warm, comforting almost.
It's the same water, the same objective temperature.
Yeah.
But the meaning you assign to it, cool or warm, is dictated entirely by the context, by your internal state. And in that moment, for you, the coolness or the warmth is an undeniable subjective truth.
And that's the whole point in a nutshell.
That is the whole point, distilled. The issue is never about the 18 degrees. It's not about how the objective world is. It's about how you are interpreting it, how you're using it.
So if your world right now seems impossibly complicated and it's full of problems and suffering,
it's because you have subjectively given it that complicated meaning. And the incredible promise of Adlerian thought is that if you can change your interpretation, if you change that subjective meaning, the world will instantly appear simple. You hold the power.
I think the biggest hurdle for most people, for me included, in accepting this idea of radical change is our belief in determinism. We're programmed to connect present effects to past causes.
Of course. I am this way because that happened to me.
Right. Who I am now, my fears, my personality, my failures, it's all fixed because it was determined by things that happened to me when I was a kid. And this is where the real fight between the youth and the philosopher kicks off.
It is. This deterministic framework, this way of thinking, is called etiology. It's the study of causation, and it really defines a huge chunk of Western psychology, especially Freudian ideas.
So etiology says your present is just an effect, and the cause is in the past, and you can't change the past.
So you're stuck. If you follow that logic, your present and your future are basically set in stone by things that happened years ago. If you're miserable now, well, it's because something in your history made you that way. End of story.
The youth gives this really painful, real-world example to back this up. He talks about a friend who's a shut-in. He hasn't left his room in years.
And the youth says the cause is obvious. It's trauma. He says the friend suffered severe parental abuse as a child, and that destroyed his self-worth and filled him with this terror of social interaction. Therefore, he cannot go out.
The cause is the abuse. The effect is being a shut-in. It seems logical.
It seems logical, but the philosopher just immediately rejects the whole premise. Because if we accept that past causes dictate the present, then every single person who suffered parental abuse would have to become a recluse or be damaged in the exact same way.
And we know that's not true.
It's demonstrably not true. People who go through terrible things often emerge stronger, or they just interpret it differently. So the past cannot be the ultimate deciding factor.
So Adlerian psychology flips this entirely. It operates under what's called teleology.
Teleology, which is the study of purpose or goals. It doesn't look at where you came from, it looks at where you're trying to go. The question shifts completely. It's not why did this happen? It's what is the goal of my current behavior?
And this is where the philosopher drops what is probably the biggest bombshell in the entire book. It's a claim that is guaranteed to make people angry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He adamantly denies the existence of trauma, at least in the traditional sense of a wound from the past that controls your life today.
Okay, wait, hold on. I have to step in here because that sounds incredibly dismissive of real suffering. I mean, people experience horrific abuse, real loss. PTSD is a real thing. Is he saying those events are just irrelevant?
No, not irrelevant as objective facts. The events happened, but they're irrelevant as the determining cause of your present behavior. The philosopher argues that the whole concept of trauma is a product of etiology. It serves a very important psychological goal for the sufferer.
Which is?
It consoles them. It says, it's not your fault that you're miserable. A terrible thing was done to you. And while that gives some comfort, it also permanently locks that person into the role of a victim and denies them any agency.
He thinks I'm powerless.
Completely. Teleology says, look, even if you were abused, the way you interpret and use that past event in the present is a choice you're making right now. The event is the 18-degree water. The choice of how to use it is the subjective meaning.
That is a massive distinction. So let's apply this teleological lens to the shut-in friend. The youth says he can't go out because he's afraid.
The philosopher argues he chooses not to go out, and then he manufactures the anxiety as a means to achieve that goal.
So the goal comes first, the goal of staying inside.
The goal of seclusion precedes the anxiety. He has the ultimate goal of not participating in society, and he is fabricating the fear, the heart palpitations, the shaking hands, as a means to achieve that goal. The symptoms are a functional, goal-oriented behavior.
But is he pretending then? Is it fake? I'm really stuck on the idea that the suffering is real. The anxiety feels real.
And that's the subtle part we have to get. The anxiety is 100% real. The physical symptoms are real physiological responses. He's not faking a panic attack. But they are not the root cause. They are symptoms created and deployed by his own mind to achieve the real underlying goal.
Okay, so what is the payoff? Why would anyone choose a goal of seclusion and anxiety? What does he get out of it?
He gets to be special. He gets attention. If he stays locked in his room, suffering, his parents worry about him constantly. They focus all their time and energy on him. He becomes the absolute center of their universe.
He becomes a special being.
A special being who commands attention. But what happens if he walks outside? If he gets better?
He becomes normal. Just another person.
He's just average, part of the faceless crowd. And nobody pays him any special attention anymore. So his goal isn't to be healthy. His goal is to maintain his special status, even if the currency he uses to buy that status is his own suffering.
That reframes so much of what we think of as victimhood. It suggests that choosing to suffer can be a tactical, even if it's unconscious, strategy for gaining power.
It's a functional choice.
Yeah.
And the exact same logic applies to another one of our big emotions, anger.
Right. The youth gives the example of a waiter spilling coffee on his brand new jacket, and he just blows up. He starts shouting. He says it was impulsive, unavoidable, pure rage.
And the philosopher just cuts right through that. He asks a simple question. What if you had been carrying a knife and you'd stabbed him? Could you still claim it was an unavoidable emotional surge you couldn't control?
Of course not. You'd be responsible.
Exactly. That hypothetical forces the admission that, at some level, there is control. Therefore, the shouting was a tool. He used it for a goal.
What goal?
To make the waiter submit. To get an apology, maybe get the jacket paid for. Shouting, fabricating the emotion of anger was just the quickest and easiest way to overpower the waiter and assert dominance. It's much faster than using calm, logical language.
There's that classic Adlerian story that proves this point, about the mother yelling at her daughter.
Yes. She's red-faced, screaming at the top of her lungs,
Yeah.
totally consumed by rage. Then the phone rings,
She picks it up.
and her voice is instantly calm, polite, professional. Hello? Oh, yes, Mr. Johnson. How lovely to hear from you. It's her daughter's teacher. She has a perfectly normal conversation.
And the second she hangs up,
The rage is back, instantly. She's screaming at her daughter again about the exact same thing.
the implication is it's undeniable. She wasn't possessed by an emotion she couldn't control.
She was using anger as a tool to dominate her daughter. She put the tool away when she needed a different one for the teacher, and then she picked it right back up again.
This is so empowering, actually. It liberates us from the past and from our own emotions.
That's the key takeaway. We aren't slaves to past events, and we aren't puppets of our emotions. We can't change the objective past. The coffee was spilled, the abuse happened. But it's the subjective meaning we attribute to it that determines our present. If we stay locked in etiology, we're giving away our free will. Teleology says we have ultimate freedom because our lives are decided right here, right now, by the goals we choose.
It's the difference between asking what happened to me and asking, okay, what am I going to do now?
So once the philosopher establishes that we are not controlled by the past, he moves on to the root cause of all our present unhappiness. And he introduces another one of Adler's really radical assertions.
Which is that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
All of them.
That's a huge claim. So if you could just magically transport someone to an empty universe where they were totally alone, all their problems would just vanish.
All of them. Except for, purely physical ones like disease.
Yeah.
But all the psychological problems, gone. Even the feeling of loneliness requires the idea of other people to exist. You can't be lonely in a vacuum.
So all the internal things we worry about, low self-esteem, self-doubt, anxiety about the future, none of them exist without other people.
They're all fueled by the presence, real or imagined, of others. Adler's point is that happiness, freedom, meaning, these aren't abstract philosophical problems. They're all just symptoms of how we are managing our interpersonal relationship problems, or IPR.
Okay, so since we're social animals and we can't actually live alone in the universe, we have to face these IPRs. The youth gives a perfect example. He says he hates himself. He has a whole list of shortcomings.
He's self-conscious, pessimistic, lacks confidence. He wishes he could just be reborn as someone else.
And the philosopher's take on this is it's shocking. He says this self-dislike is a choice. And not only that, it's a highly functional, useful choice.
Because not liking oneself serves the ultimate goal of avoiding the hard work of interpersonal relationships.
How on earth can hating yourself be a strategy?
It creates the perfect excuse. It's a justification loop for staying put and not trying. By focusing obsessively on his own shortcomings, I'm too awkward, I'm not smart enough, I'm too ugly, he's creating a preemptive excuse for any potential rejection or failure.
The underlying logic being, well, if I weren't so flawed, then I could succeed, then I could be loved.
Exactly. So now, if he goes out into the world and fails, the rejection is tolerable. He can always fall back on his excuse. See, I told you I wasn't good enough. It protects him from a much scarier truth.
Which is?
The truth that he just lacks the courage to make the effort and risk failure as he is. The self-hate lets him retreat into a shell and avoid the difficult task of forming relationships and striving for goals. The goal isn't to suffer. The goal is to avoid the fear.
This connects directly to the feeling of inferiority, which the youth is just riddled with. He's constantly comparing himself to everyone.
And feelings of inferiority are, by definition, IPRs. They only arise through comparison to other people. An objective fact, like your height, say you're 155 centimeters tall, that fact only becomes an inferior feeling when you compare yourself to someone who's 185 centimeters.
But the great thing about it being subjective is that you can choose how to see it.
You can. You can see your height as a disadvantage, or you can do what the philosopher did and see it as an advantage. He claimed it made people feel relaxed and non-threatened around him. The objective fact is fixed, but the meaning is your choice.
But then the philosopher makes this really crucial distinction between a healthy feeling of inferiority and a debilitating inferiority complex.
Right. The simple feeling of inferiority is normal. It's healthy. It's the stimulant for growth. It's what Adler called the pursuit of superiority. Not being better than others, but the natural drive to improve yourself, to move from a minus to a plus.
But the complex is when you start using that feeling as an excuse to stop trying.
That's it. You start using that if-only language. If only I had more money, I could start that business. If only I had a better education, I'd speak up in that meeting.
You create a fake cause and effect.
Adler calls it apparent cause and effect. You convince yourself this causal link exists where it doesn't. But the hidden true purpose is, I don't actually want to risk failing at that business, so I will invent this excuse about money. It's a life lie you tell yourself because you lack the courage to change.
And this fear of being inferior gives birth to its opposite, the superiority complex.
Which is so important to understand. The superiority complex is not real confidence. It's just compensation for a really deep-seated, terrifying feeling of inferiority. The person is so afraid of being seen as inadequate that they have to constantly overcompensate.
How does that usually show up?
A few common ways. One is what he calls giving authority. This is the person who's always name-dropping powerful people they know, or who is obsessed with luxury brands.
They're trying to make themselves look special by borrowing power from something else.
Exactly. They hope you'll confuse the expensive logo on their shirt with their own intrinsic worth. Another classic is the braggart, the person constantly talking about their past achievements.
The one who boasts does so only out of a feeling of inferiority.
It's such a powerful line. If you truly have deep, unshakable confidence, you don't need to boast. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. The boasting is a desperate attempt to shore up a fragile ego.
And then there's the most manipulative form, which is bragging about your misfortune. The special being trap.
This is a pure power play. The person uses their suffering, a difficult childhood, a chronic illness, to become a special being. And when you try to comfort them, they see things like, you could never understand what I've been through.
Which effectively shuts you down.
It shuts you down and forces everyone around them to walk on eggshells, giving the sufferer immense, if toxic, control over them. It proves that weakness can be incredibly powerful. A baby, completely helpless, rules the entire household.
And all of these complexes, all this self-hate, it all comes from one single toxic worldview.
Viewing all of your interpersonal relationships as competition.
If every relationship is a competition, there have to be winners and losers. You're constantly comparing. And if the world is a competition, then everyone around you is a potential enemy.
Even your friends, your family, they're all rivals who must never be underestimated. It puts you in a state of constant, exhausting vigilance. Even if you're winning, you can't relax because you might lose the next round. The world becomes this perilous, stressful place.
And a symptom of that is just excessive self-consciousness. We worry nonstop about how we look, what we say.
And the philosopher shares that wonderful story about his self-conscious grandmother who told him, "You're the only one who's worried how you look."
The truth is, people are just not paying that much attention to us. We're so busy fighting our own internal war that we forget everyone else is just as worried about their own stuff.
So the way out is to just release the idea of competition, to see people not as rivals but as comrades. When you can truly feel that people are your comrades, your partners on this journey, the world changes. Admitting you're wrong isn't a defeat anymore. Celebrating someone else's success doesn't diminish you. It's a completely different way of being.
Okay, so we've established that all problems are relational, and the key is to shift from competition to camaraderie. But that shift feels impossible if we're constantly looking for external validation.
It is impossible. Which brings us to the next and maybe the most difficult step in the whole philosophy. The philosopher argues that Adlerian psychology denies the need to seek recognition.
The desire for recognition, or D4R, I mean, this is so deeply ingrained in us. We're taught from birth that if you do something good, you get praised. If you do something bad, you get punished.
So the child very quickly learns the game. If I do the right thing, I get a reward. Or, maybe more damagingly, if no one is going to praise me for this, why should I even bother?
Our whole motivation becomes external. We're constantly worried about how we're being judged by our parents, our partners, our boss.
And when you live your life constantly trying to satisfy those external expectations, you are, by definition, throwing away your authentic self. You end up living, as the philosopher says, other people's lives.
We have to remember that we aren't living to satisfy their expectations, and they aren't living to satisfy ours.
And that's not being cynical or nihilistic. That is radical freedom. That is self-reliance.
So the core mechanism for actually achieving this freedom, for cutting through all the tangled knots of our relationships, is the separation of tasks.
Yes, the separation of tasks, or SOT, this is the practical tool. This is the sword you use to slice through the Gordian knot. You know the story.
The knot was impossible to untie, so Alexander the Great just cut it with his sword.
Exactly. Our relationship problems are just as tangled. You can't untie them with conventional methods. You have to take a new, radical approach. You have to figure out whose task is whose.
And the criterion for that is super simple. Who ultimately receives the end result of the choice being made?
Let's use the classic and probably most painful example. A child studying. If the child chooses not to study, who ultimately suffers the consequences? A bad grade, not getting into college.
The child does, not the parent. Therefore, studying is the child's task.
It is the child's task.
But wait, the parent is suffering right there with them.
Yeah.
The parent is worried sick. They see all this potential going to waste. Isn't that a shared task?
The parent's worry is the parent's task. But commanding the child to study is an intrusion. And it's usually done to fulfill the parent's own goals.
Like what?
Maybe to avoid the social judgment of being seen as a bad parent. Or to satisfy their own ego, their desire to control the child's future. And the child senses this. They feel they're being forced to live up to someone else's expectations, and so they rebel.
This is a really tough lens to look through. How do we draw the line between this kind of intrusion and, genuine help?
The difference is between intervention and assistance. Intervention is intrusion. It's commanding, forcing, manipulating. Assistance, or what Adler calls encouragement, can only happen once you respect the separation of tasks.
So the parent can say, I am here to help you whenever you feel like studying, but they can't force it.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Forcing someone else to fulfill your goal just creates resentment and makes the problem worse.
This applies so much to adult life, too. I mean, think about that friend who is always complaining about their terrible job but never does anything about it. We feel this obligation to fix it for them.
But the suffering we experience over their choice is our task. Their decision to stay or leave is ultimately their task. And if you're living a life full of worry and hardship because you're carrying everyone else's tasks, you have to learn to draw a boundary and say, from this point on, that is not my task. You have to discard other people's tasks to lighten your own load.
I can see the freedom in that, but what about at work? If my boss is just unreasonable or dislikes me for no reason, is ignoring it really an option?
The separation of tasks still applies. Whether your boss likes you or acknowledges your work or gives you that promotion, that is his task. It's dictated by his own subjective goals and feelings.
So what's my task?
Your task is to do your work diligently and live authentically. If you start saying, I can't do my job well because my boss hates me, that's a life lie. You're using the awful boss as a convenient excuse to avoid your own responsibility or your fear of finding a better job.
It gets rid of all the scapegoats. It forces you to take 100% responsibility for your own life.
And this leads to what is maybe the most provocative and for some people the most frightening definition of freedom in the entire book.
Freedom is being disliked by other people.
I mean, that is so deeply counterintuitive, isn't it? We're social creatures. Being disliked causes real psychological pain. Why would Adler say this is the definition of freedom?
Because trying to live in a way where no one dislikes you is impossible.
It requires you to constantly be gauging other people's feelings, to compromise your principles, to lie to yourself. It's the definition of an unfree, stressful life. You're living completely on other people's terms.
So being disliked is actually proof that you're living freely, according to your own principles.
It is. And the core task separation here is absolutely crucial. Not wanting to be disliked is my task, but whether or not this person actually dislikes me is the other person's task. I have no control over that. I cannot intervene in their feelings.
And once you truly accept that, you can stop wasting all that energy trying to please everyone.
That is the Gordian knot, severed. The courage to be happy includes the courage to be disliked, because accepting that possibility is the price you pay for your own freedom.
Okay, so the ultimate goal of all of this, of shifting from competition, separating tasks, embracing our freedom, is to reach something called community feeling.
Or social interest, yes.
Yeah.
But before we get to the destination, we should probably clarify a term that trips a lot of people up, which is Adler's individual psychology.
Because it sounds like it's all about the individual being selfish.
Right, but the word individual actually comes from the Latin individuum, which means indivisible.
Oh.
Adler rejected the whole idea of splitting a person up into parts, like a mind separate from a body or reason separate from emotion. He believed in holism.
So when you fly into a rage, it's not some separate emotion that attacks your rational mind.
No, it is I as a whole who is choosing to shout. I am fabricating that emotion to achieve a goal. We are a unified, indivisible self.
Okay, so the indivisible self is our starting point. The destination is community feeling. What exactly is that?
It is the ultimate goal for our interpersonal relationships. It's the sense of others as comrades, as partners in life, not as enemies. And it's the deep awareness of having one's own refuge within that community. It's a feeling that it's okay to be here.
And what's really fascinating is how Adler defines community. It's not just your family or your town.
He expands it infinitely. It goes way beyond your immediate circle to include the entire universe, all of time past and future generations. Plants, animals, even inanimate objects.
Why so broad? Why is that infinite scope so important?
For psychological resilience,
Yeah.
imagine someone whose entire identity is tied up in one small community, like their job. They're a high-powered executive, that's who they are. Then they get laid off or they retire.
Their entire sense of self just collapses.
It's destroyed because their whole world was that one tiny community. Adler says we have to know that there's always a larger community to find refuge in. We have to listen to the voice of that larger community, not just the small one we happen to be in right now.
So to actually make that switch from being self-centered, well, worrying about how others see me, to having a genuine concern for others, this community feeling, there are 3 components. This is like the practical recipe.
It is. The first is self-acceptance. And this is not the kind of simplistic self-affirmation you see on posters, the I can do anything stuff. No. Adler calls it affirmative resignation. It means accepting the irreplaceable this me, just as it is.
Affirmative resignation sounds a lot like giving up.
It's the opposite. It's accepting the objective facts, the equipment you have that can't be changed, your height, your past experiences. But then you have the courage to change how you use that equipment. If you score a 60 out of 100, self-acceptance means you stop wishing you had 100 and you start figuring out how to make the absolute best use of the 60 you've got.
You accept the fact, but you choose the meaning. The second component is confidence in others.
And this has to be unconditional confidence, not conditional trust.
What's the difference?
Conditional trust is what we use in business. It's credit. I trust you only if you provide collateral or some kind of guarantee. If you don't, I don't trust you. And building real human relationships on that basis is just toxic. It's always looking for proof that your partner is cheating or that your friends don't really like you.
But you have to approach people with unconditional confidence without demanding guarantees.
You have to, even if it means you risk being betrayed. And remember, whether they betray you or not is their task, not yours. Starting from a place of doubt instantly creates a negative relationship. Unconditional confidence is the means by which you can build deep, horizontal relationships and start seeing others as comrades.
That takes a lot of courage, the courage to be vulnerable. It really does. And that leads to the third and most practical component. This is the one that acts as the compass for your whole life. Contribution to others.
So the feeling that I am of use to someone.
That subjective feeling is the only thing that can give a person a true awareness of their own worth. It's the direct antidote to that self-centered goal of just getting attention for yourself.
And this ties right back to why we work.
Exactly. The deep psychological reason for work isn't just to earn a paycheck. It's to confirm our sense of belonging by contributing to the community. It explains why incredibly rich people who don't need the money still work or do charity. They are striving to feel their own worth by being useful. So to achieve this community feeling and contribute, we have to basically tear down all of our vertical relationships, these hierarchies of control, and replace them with horizontal relationships.
Which are based on equality and mutual respect. And this means we have to eliminate our use of both praise and rebuke.
Okay, the idea of eliminating praise is another one that needs a serious pushback. I mean, if I praise my child for doing a great job, my intention is good. I'm trying to encourage them. Are you telling me that's secretly manipulative?
The intention might feel good, but the underlying structure is judgmental. When you praise someone, you are putting yourself in a superior position. You're the judge who has the authority to validate their worth.
You're passing judgment from above.
Right. Whether we praise or rebuke, the goal in a vertical relationship is control. It's to get the other person to behave in a way that satisfies our expectations. This is why Adler was so critical of reward and punishment education. It's designed to manipulate children.
But if I stop praising my kid for getting good grades, won't they just stop trying?
On the contrary, being praised teaches a person that they only have worth when they get validation from a superior. Their goal becomes getting praised, not actual growth. They become completely dependent on that external good job to feel adequate.
So what's the alternative? If I can't say good job, what do I say? This is the encouragement approach.
Right. And you replace judgment with gratitude. Instead of praising a friend who helped you move, you don't say, good job lifting boxes. You say, thank you so much. That was a huge help. I couldn't have done it without you.
It's not a judgment. It's a horizontal expression of gratitude.
Exactly. And when someone hears words of gratitude, they get a direct sense of their own contribution. They feel their worth on their own terms without needing a superior to validate it for them.
That shifts the whole dynamic from, am I good enough for you, to, I am of use to others.
And that realization of usefulness brings us to maybe the most moving part of the book, which is the challenge to how we measure human value. We have to shift from judging people on the level of acts to valuing them on the level of being.
Because the youth asks a great question. If worth is based on being useful, on what a person does, what about people who can't do things? The bedridden, the disabled, newborns.
By a purely utilitarian level of acts logic, their lives could be seen as worthless. And the philosopher just rejects that completely. He says, we must look at others on the level of being. We rejoice in their very existence.
He uses that powerful example of the youth's mother being in a car accident. In that moment, he wouldn't care what she could do. He would just be overwhelmingly grateful that she was alive, that she existed.
We value the existence itself, and the shift to apply that to ourselves, to accept ourselves on the level of being. We are of use to the world simply by being here.
This self-acceptance is what helps us overcome that lack of harmony of life, that tendency to generalize, to say, everyone hates me.
Right. They're focusing on one tiny part of the picture. The book uses that Jewish teaching. Out of 10 people, 1 will criticize you no matter what, 2 will become close friends, and 7 will be completely indifferent.
And the person lacking harmony focuses only on that one critic and decides that's the whole story.
And a perfect example of this lack of harmony in practice is workaholism. The philosopher calls it a life lie. It's a lifestyle where you decide your worth is based only on your work, on the level of acts.
But when that person can't work anymore, they get older, they get sick, their whole value system collapses because they ignored all the other life tasks. Friendship, family, love.
Their foundation was too narrow and fragile. Which brings us to the final existential idea here, how we see life itself. Most of us see it as a line, a story, leading to some destination, a promotion or retirement. The present is just a preparatory period.
I'm not happy yet, but I will be when I get there.
Adler rejects that completely. Life is not a line, it is a series of dots, a series of moments. The past is gone, the future doesn't exist. All we have is this moment. We have to live earnestly in the here and now, like a dancer whose purpose is the dance itself, not getting to the other side of the room.
So, if life is just a series of these moments, these dots, what's the point? What is happiness? The philosopher started this whole thing by claiming everyone can be happy, and now he finally delivers the definition.
That's so simple and elegant. Since the greatest unhappiness is not being able to like oneself, the solution has to be the reverse. So, happiness is the feeling of contribution.
That's it.
That's it. And it doesn't matter if the contribution is visible to anyone else. It doesn't need to be validated. All that matters is your own subjective sense, your private feeling that I am of use to someone.
But wait, this sounds dangerously close to that desire for recognition we were just told is so toxic. How is this different?
The desire for recognition is just the easy, quick fix way to get that feeling of contribution. But it's a trap. It makes you a slave to other people's expectations and values. But if you already have the real internal subjective feeling of contribution, you don't need anyone else's praise. The desire for recognition just disappears. And that is freedom.
This all seems to come back to that desire to be special.
It's a universal human drive, this pursuit of superiority. But when trying to be especially good seems too hard, or we fail, we often flip to trying to be especially bad.
Problem behavior, delinquency, acting out.
The goal is identical, to get attention, to become a special being. It's the pursuit of easy superiority because it takes way less effort to be a problem than it does to genuinely strive and grow. And when the community reacts with worry and anger, they're giving that person exactly what they want.
Confirming their special status.
Which is why the real courage, the courage for a free and happy life, is the courage to be normal. The courage to accept your average, mediocre self and not feel the need to flaunt superiority or inferiority. Being normal isn't being incapable, it's refusing to play the special being game.
So finally, the biggest question of all, the meaning of life. If it's not a pre-written story, what's the point of it all?
Adler's answer is stark, but I think it's also incredibly empowering. He says life in general has no meaning.
No meaning.
No inherent meaning. Meaning isn't something that's given to you. It's something that must be assigned to it by the individual. We have to stop asking the etiological question of why did this happen and start asking the teleological question, what meaning do I choose to give this from now on?
The meaning is a subjective choice.
It is. And when you are making that choice, when you're charting your own path in freedom, you need a compass. You need a guiding star. And for Adler, that guiding star is always contribution to others.
As long as you don't lose sight of that star.
You won't lose your way. You might be disliked. You might not get praised. But you'll move forward freely, knowing that your power to choose the meaning of your own life is absolute. If I change, the world changes. And that change has to start right here, right now. So, to recap, we really dissected the core pillars of Adler's philosophy of courage. We've seen the need to reject the chains of ideology for the freedom of teleology. We've learned that all our suffering comes from our interpersonal relationship problems.
And that the path to freedom is through that radical act of the separation of tasks. It all culminates in this idea of community feeling, which is a sense of belonging built on three really concrete pillars: self-acceptance, unconditional confidence in others, and that ultimate goal, this objective feeling of contribution.
And these are not just, gentle suggestions. This is strong philosophical medicine. It requires real courage to step outside the easy comfort of getting praise and living up to other people's expectations.
The world is simple, but it takes courage to see it that way. The courage to be normal, the courage to be disliked, and the courage to choose your own meaning.
And the most important thing to remember is that you are already holding all the interpersonal relationship cards you need to change your life right now. The real question is, are you brave enough to discard the past and play them?
We hope this deep dive into the courage to be disliked has sparked your own philosophical journey. If you enjoyed this summary, please subscribe and like the Mindset Matters Book Club YouTube channel to hear new book summaries.